It is my joy to introduce Father Martin Farrell, Dominican friar. Father Martin is a member of the Dominican province of St. Dominic of Canada, and he's been with us for the past 4 months in Vancouver. My name is Father Gabriel, and I'm going to ask him a few questions. Father Martin, what are your impressions in a nutshell of Vancouver, the sceneries, the weather, the people?
Well, regarding the scenery and the weather, I have to tell you that being a native New Yorker from New York City, you've seen one tree, you've seen them all. I'm not a big fan of trees and things. However, with regard to the folks, I have to tell you, I have never seen people like in Catholic parishes like I've seen here in Vancouver. These folks are the most supportive, most enthusiastic folks I've ever met. They love their priests. They love priests. Like I said before, they eat us up with spoons, and they're so anxious to support us and to learn from us that anything you give them, they get wildly enthusiastic about. I love the folks here, and I could minister to folks like this forever.
Have you been shocked by the fact that there are 92 nationalities represented at St. Mary's Parish, which is one of the biggest Catholic parishes in the diocese? Have you been shocked?
Probably not shocked, but I certainly was sobered. I'm beginning to speak with a Filipino accent. 65%, somebody told me, of St. Mary's Parish is Filipino. I think somebody said 10% is Chinese and Japanese, and the other percent is, the rest of it is Caucasian. I've never been in an environment like that.
Let's move on to the ministry now. What has been your experience at St. Mary's Parish in terms of ministry?
Well, the experience, my own personal experience has been somewhat limited, I think, for a variety of reasons. First of all, I was only assigned here for 4 months as a kind of stopgap so that Father Marcel could perfect his English. Okay, so basically my job was, as I understood it, to provide relief in the parish for things like masses and homilies and stuff until Father's English got better. Consequently, my parish ministry has mostly consisted of weekend help-outs, the masses and the confessions on the weekend, then those occasional masses during the week days, and then the masses that were said at the local nursing home 3 times a month, and the nuns. So that's pretty much my experience.
Have the parishioners been impressed by your preaching?
You have to ask the parishioners. I don't know. I hate to talk about that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I don't want to embarrass you, but the parishioners might have noticed that you're different, that you've got different gestures and you've got a different way of celebrating Mass. Can you talk briefly about it?
Well, okay, first of all, in terms of preaching, I hate to say it, but I kind of think of myself as a kind of born teacher. I love to teach, and I preach like I teach. I'm not very stylized. I'm just kind of there. In terms of the liturgy, well, I've been trained as a liturgist. I have a doctorate in liturgy, and my sense of liturgy is probably much more informed by things preceding 1964 or things Greek than perhaps is the experience, especially here in Canada, where we seem to be, there seems to be a growth edge in terms of catching up with the direction the Church is taking liturgically. I hope that makes sense.
That does make sense. We're going to now talk a little bit about Dominican life as you've experienced it in Vancouver. Could you tell us about the life that you lived with the friars here? maybe talk a little bit also about the joys of Dominican life. And uh, you've gotten acquainted, you know well, our Dominican nuns, contemplative nuns in Langley. So why don't we start with the life of the friars here?
You know, my whole life, my whole religious life, with very few exceptions, I've lived in small houses with small communities. And so when I came to the Dominican province of Canada, where my first experience was a large house in Ottawa, uh, I, I have to say I was convinced of a predisposition I always had. That is, that Dominican life is better lived in large communities, in larger houses, which does not describe Vancouver. That having been said, however, I have to say that the tiny community here in Vancouver, 4 regular friars, okay, has in many respects, and in fact most respects, fulfilled um, uh, every kind of ideal I've experienced of Dominican life. There are prayerful people here. There are intelligent people here. There are people very, very committed to the ministry of preaching. Okay, and there are folks here who really want to preserve our observance, particularly the monastic elements of our observance, which in many Dominican provinces, even in our own, have in the last 40 years gone somewhat begging. So, but the other part about this life, the life here, is that there seems to be a real intellectual commitment among the friars, which I've never seen in our province as nakedly as I've seen it here. We have tremendous discussions. We have great fights. And being an Irishman, with whose mother had a favorite expression, "Is this a private fight or can anybody join?" makes me tremendously enthusiastic about the potential intellectual life of this community for a larger group. I hope that's clear.
Have you experienced this these table or dinner discussions, very serious sometimes, and I think sometimes they can get a little bit tense, with the antidote of this, that is Dominican humor and joy?
You know, the thing that made me a Dominican, I'm convinced, was years ago I was a postulant in St. Joseph Province back in the 60s.